That's the latest feature story news.
It's the BBG, not the BBC. You're listening to the Richie Allen Radio Show, live from Salford in Greater Manchester.
I tell you what, it's been another glorious day. You might very well thank the BBG for being here, because I felt this afternoon like going for a pint of cider, and then I thought every pub in the country is closed down. No beer gardens, no nothing in May. I thought I better come and talk to you then. So it is Thursday's programme, May 7th, 2020. The BBG, not the BBC, live from Salford, and I look forward to hearing from you over the course of the next hour or thereabouts, because I'm on my Todd today, my Sweeney Todd. My Sweeney Todd. My Sweeney Todd, I tell you.
It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Soft day, Vicaline, soft day. Shirts is gorgeous. What I'm going to do is round up the biggest stories of the day. That's a joke, isn't it? We're going to look at the latest reporting on COVID-19, and we'll have a chat. I'll pay closer attention to your tweets today than I've been doing maybe this week. But I've had some very interesting interviewees this week. That's my excuse. Anywho. Lovely jubbly. Yeah. That is great. I don't know how long it's going to last. I didn't look ahead to the weekend. It is a bank holiday, of course, this weekend. Strangely, Friday. Bank holiday tomorrow. It doesn't mean a thing. It doesn't mean anything because of the lockdown. So many people being out of work. So many children being in school. Not in school. Out of school. So the bank holidays don't feel any different than any other day. Every day is like Sunday. I've said that before. The old Morrissey thing. Every day is like Sunday. Now, before we get into some of the stuff in more detail, just some of the stories. There's a lot of news outlets reporting that we've got to be very careful over the bank holiday weekend and that we should stay away from the beauty spots of the UK. They've cancelled the Notting Hill Carnival because of the coronavirus. I have never been to Notting Hill Carnival. I've been in London on a couple of occasions, living in London at a time that it was on, but I've never been there. Interesting stories about passengers being told to wear gloves at some UK airports, but not all of them, strangely enough. The new rules will apply to people travelling through Manchester, Stansted and East Midlands airports from next Thursday. And that's because Manchester Airports Group owns those airports in Stansted, East Midlands and Manchester. If you're going through those airports from next Thursday, you'll have to have a face mask and you'll have to be wearing gloves as well. Yes, indeed. There is a little bit of noise. You may pick up on a little bit of it. There isn't anything I can do about it today. A little bit of noise coming from outside, but we'll grin and bear it. We'll work through it. So that's the story. Also a very interesting story about Black Britons facing twice the risk of death with coronavirus. We might get into that in a few minutes' time. And mental well-being is everywhere today. And this comes up regularly. The notion that we're all basically very vulnerable to mental health problems. And today, many a commentator is going on to many a radio and television station to say that the COVID lockdown is going to be responsible for an avalanche, for an epidemic of mental health problems going forward. Right, so those are the big stories. Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary, is leading the COVID briefing this afternoon. Let's start with the biggest story of the day. The Bank of England is warning that the country, the UK, is facing a recession the likes of which hasn't been seen in 300 years. The economy expected to shrink by 14% this year. It's all bad, but there's some good, according to the Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey. Here he is speaking with the BBC earlier today. Andrew Bailey then.
The scenario, as I should say, it's not a forecast. We've been very careful about this. We don't feel we're in a position to do what I might call a more normal forecast. So it is a scenario. It's based on a gradual lifting of the restrictions really through the through the period from starting at the beginning of June through to really about the end of September, really, into September. And then thereafter, not all the economic activity comes back. There's quite a sharp recovery of economic activity. But we've also factored in that people will be cautious of their own choice, as it were. So we've got some further recovery thereafter, as people sort of in a sense are cautious. They don't engage and re-engage fully, and so it's really only until next summer and thereafter that activity comes fully back. Then finally, we then had the question about how much sort of, if you like, long-term damage to the economy is done. Now we've actually made assumptions on that. They're quite limited though, and the reason for that is that we think the policies that are in place, policies the Chancellor has put in place, particularly the job scheme, are really working, and that they are going to enable people. The furloughing scheme really does enable people to come back into the economy more quickly. So it's a much quicker recovery than you've seen in the past in terms of recessions, if there is such a thing as a normal recession that we've seen. So it is a different shape in that sense.
Yeah, did you understand a bloody word of that? Me neither. You're not meant to understand it. What it means is ultimately we're fecked in short order. And of course we are. We'll look at that in more detail in a moment. You might remember Alistair Darling. Remember him? The former Labour Chancellor of the Exchequer. A man who made John Major look colourful. Eh? You're Googling furiously now, aren't you? You're Googling furiously. Darling is so grey. Well, I can't finish that sentence. Makes Major look very sprightly. Alistair Darling, former Chancellor, he was on the BBC this morning on the Today programme Radio 4. Here he is talking about the shock to the economy.
We are living in extraordinary times. As the Bank of England has said, we haven't seen this sort of thing for maybe 300 years. It's much, much worse than the financial crisis of 10 years ago. What I would say, and I agree with everybody who's been on the programme this morning, is that I think the government has to be flexible about the furlough plan, because if you're going to get people to go back to work, I think it's highly unlikely they're all going to go back to work on day one. We need to have so people can go on to short work, they can gradually be reintroduced to their jobs. But can I also make another point, which I think is important? I hope, like everybody else, that many jobs come back and people can go back to work. But I think we must plan on the basis that some jobs will not come back, or at least they won't come back at anything like an acceptable rate. And that means the government has also got to announce a plan for jobs. A plan for jobs. And, of course, anybody over 50, maybe anybody over 40, will, especially if they were born and bred in the old UK, born in the UK, they will, of course, remember what Thatcher did to the miners. Thatcher, whom I hope it's very fucking warm where you are, Maggie. What she did to the miners, and how there was no thought given, there were no plans, of course deliberately, we know why, put into place to give those men and those communities viable opportunities, jobs in the wake of the pit closures, right? So he goes on to that. So Darling is saying lots of the jobs will not be coming back. And for jobs. If you go back to the 1980s when you had mass unemployment, people were basically, they went on the dole and they stayed there. Now things changed. In 1997 we had the New Deal for Jobs, which was aimed at getting people into jobs, retraining and so on. And I think we really have to factor in the very strong possibility that there will be people who will not be able to go back to their own jobs, and we do not want to find that they go from furlough to redundancy.
But that's the big political choice, which I imagine we'll be debating not just for weeks and months, but for many years to come. On the one hand, you seem to be suggesting the government can do that. There are some who are arguing, though, that, look, there are new jobs out there, new jobs in supermarkets, new jobs in delivery.
New jobs in supermarkets. BBC political heavyweight Nick Robinson talking about people, who've had jobs in manufacturing, who've had jobs in tourism and in hospitality. And Robinson is saying, don't worry about it, they can go and stack fucking shelves. Listen, I tell you, I come from Ballybeg in Waterford City, I'm proud of it. I stacked shelves. And there are people who can't do anything else but stack shelves. Doesn't make them thick or any less relevant or important than me or anybody else. But the cheek of a BBC guy earning £1 million a year saying to people who've had jobs that stimulate their fucking brains that you can go and stack shelves in a supermarket or work overnight before Tesco opens at 6 running around, or you can go and work in a cage for Jeff Bezos. chasing around stupid fucking presents with a stopwatch hanging over your head, getting paid minimum wage. Easy to say, isn't it, from your ivory towers and the BBC? There are jobs out there, 0 hours contract jobs, in fast food outlets, pushing a fucking broom around McDonald's, or stacking shelves, eh? That's the BBC for you.
In deliveries, new jobs in warehousing, but government paying people's wages to stay at home means there's no incentive for people to swap jobs, to go and look for that work.
Well, that's very easy to say if you're not actually one of these people who are in dire financial straits.
Well said, Alistair Darling. I know you're a fucking warmongering scumbag, and like your pals Tony Blair and that other Egypt, Alistair Campbell, you should be hanging from your ankles in the Tower of London. But well said, pal. It's easy for you to say, Robinson. People were going along nicely with maybe a couple of grand of fucking parachute money in the bank, and they were putting up with that and they were going along. And next thing, the government came along and ended everything. But it's okay because they can go scrub fucking toilets in nightclubs, can they? In the future. Or run around Tesco's or Morrison's, can they? These are insane times, aren't they? Fair play to Darling for pulling them on that.
I do not believe that the state can plan everything and tell you where you're going to go and work or anything like that. But what I do know from my lifetime experience is, having seen what happened in the 1980s, where the government basically stepped back and said, look, these people will take care of themselves. It doesn't work. And
the government didn't do that. That's not what Thatcher did. What Thatcher wanted to do was destroy the only place in the UK where socialism thrived, where trade unionism thrived. They didn't just close the pits and let people figure it out for themselves. It was a deliberate attack, a war on socialism, on communities and on trade unions. That's what it was. It was a deliberate policy to leave those guys with nothing at the end of it. That's the truth of it. Regardless of your political persuasion or where you are on the political spectrum, you look at it properly, what happened in the 1980s in the UK, in the northeast, the northwest, in the north of the country, and see what was really going on. Alistair Darling, you heard there. 15 and a half minutes past the hour. This is the Richie Allen Show. It's just me and you, I think, till about 6 o'clock today. The airlines are screwed. Tens of thousands of people losing their jobs. Tourism, millions of people, cars, manufacturing, screwed. And today we heard that 15,000 pubs are going to close as well across the country. 15,000 pubs are going to be gone. Emma McClarkin is the CEO of the British Beer and Pubs Association. She was on LBC Radio this morning with Nick Ferrari. Let me say again, Emma McClarkin, the CEO of the British Beer and Pubs Association. She's positively bricking it, as are, I would imagine, every landlord and landlady in the country. Emma McClarkin.
The risk is extraordinarily real, and amongst our members we have seen similar figures to the survey that you're quoting this morning, and pubs will close, and they will close for good if they do not see a pathway back to reopening or receive government support. So the option is clear. If you want your pub, you need to press the government with us to get the support that we need to see us through.
Pubs can't operate, can they, with social distancing?
Social distancing at 2 metres, as it currently is, would be practically impossible in most of our...
We're living in an insane asylum. They're talking on the radio about social distancing. A new phrase in our lexicon, which is positively fucking hateful and horrible and anti-human. Social distancing. It's bad enough. And now they're talking about it as a measure introduced so that we can reopen pubs. I laughed at this the other day. Yeah, it was funny for 10 seconds, but it isn't funny. Going to a pub, having to sit on your own, and you have a 3-drink limit. There you are. Now get the fuck out of here so we can let somebody else in. What the hell, people? What the hell?
Our venues, I would have to tell you. And we all know a pub where you probably couldn't even walk around the bar with a 2 metre radius or get to the bathroom along the passageway. So the reality is that we, of course, want to play our part in the fight against coronavirus, and we have. We have closed our businesses and they are in the deep freeze, but they won't be able to remain there for much longer without more government support, or a pathway back to more safe socialising within health and safety constraints, but allowing us to bring some business in to help us keep those businesses alive.
Let's put some numbers to this. How many people broadly are employed in this sector, and how much is it worth to the economy, Emma?
Wait till you hear this. How many people broadly employed in the pub game, and how much does it contribute to the coffers, to the economy?
The economy, Emma.
The beer and pub sector contributes 23 billion, and we are also 900,000 employees in the UK. So nearly
23 billion quid and 900,000 employees.
A million people. So we're really, really in danger now. And based on those figures, you would be seeing 15,000 pubs closing.
15,000 pubs closing for good. Jean Ann Crowley says to me, you're talking about the destruction, deliberate of society. The deliberate destruction of society, says Jean Ann. As we know it, society as we've grown up in, and they, she says, meaning ordinary folks like me, most people can't see it. Can't see it. Or are seeing it but just don't want to, would prefer to bury your head in the sand and just pretend it's not going on. Pretend it's not going on. These are mad times. I'm going to take a tune. It's 19 and a half minutes past the hour. It's the Richie Allen Radio Show live from Salford. What a great city Salford is, especially when the sun is shining as it is today. Elvis Presley is lined up. When we come back, we'll go another way, and I will read out some of your tweets as well. All right? Here's the king of rock and roll. Have you ever seen the film The Way It Is about Elvis Presley? You must have seen The Way It Is, which was filmed over a few matinees and a few evening performances at the International Hotel in Las Vegas in the early 70s. It's an extraordinary film, and it's Elvis at his absolute best. And the version of Suspicious Minds is about 6 minutes long, and it goes on and on and on at the end, where he keeps repeating the chorus. Not repetitively. He doesn't repeat it repetitively. There you go. But the band gets faster and faster and faster. And you can see Ronnie Tutt, the amazing drummer, behind him, giving it absolute socks. And James Burton and Jerry Sheff and Glenn Harden and all those guys. And it reminds me, you've been listening to me for long enough, I think, over the years, going back to Spain. And you'll know I've never, ever been a name dropper. But I got to meet the Taking Care of Business band in Marbella at the Palacios. What was it called? What was it called? Palacio del Congresos. That's the one in Marbella. Yeah, I won't try and pronounce that again. Might get me into some trouble. But went to see them because they were in town with a young man singing the songs, whose name escapes me. But because I was involved in radio there at the time, we got to meet Ronnie Tutt. We got to meet James Burton. We got to meet Glenn Harden. And we got to meet Jerry Schilling. Jerry Schilling was Elvis's bodyguard and his friend. And we had a few beers with them. And some of the stories they were telling us in a little private audience, it was just me and a couple of other guys. And these great men who'd spent years on the road with Elvis. It's one of those nights I'll never forget as long as I live. And the future Mrs. Allen still grinds her teeth to this day. Because she was invited. And she'd been working all day in Marbella at a firm she was working with at the time, and was tired and didn't want to come along. And when I came back with these photographs of Ronnie and the band, well, she was fairly pissed off, to say the least. Anyway, good evening to Moinga. How you doing, Moinga? Good evening to Busy as well, to Marissa, to Patrick. Patrick says, I'm telling people what they need to do. Covertly get 1 million of us to march on the BBC. Take it over. If some of us get killed, amen, says Patrick. Patrick, I don't want to get killed. Are you saying you're a coward, BBG? No, I've never been a coward, but I don't know about marching on the BBC. I don't know what good that's going to do, but fair enough. Then make sure people are told the truth, and then 5 million of us will take over Parliament, says Patrick. Patrick, I hope you've had a couple of Guinnesses or two this afternoon. Hi to Susan, who saw the film The Way It Is. Great film, Susan. We've got a copy of it on Blu-ray, I must watch it over the weekend if I get a chance. Hi to Charlie Girl as well. Jason loved the bit of Elvis Presley there. I'm sure Jean Ann there in Cleggan liked a bit of Elvis as well. Jean Ann hasn't listened to anything that has been recorded since 1987, as far as I understand. Not in recent years. Hi to Bolly Briggan Lad. Hi to Sutty's Rehab, who says he can't get agency work as the Eastern Europeans have it all stitched up. 2 years at Vauxhalls was cool as the unions kept them out, he said. Is that right? That's interesting. Hi to JT The Game. How you doing, JT The Game? To Base Ninja. To Faisal. How you doing, Faisal? To Alfie Ralph and so on. Now, Jean-Ann never liked Elvis. I knew there was something wrong with Jean-Ann Crowley. Elvis is God, as the great Colm Meaney once said in a very great film called The Commitments. There you go. Right. So the pubs are screwed. What else is there for you? I've been working very hard on this today. Do you know what's infuriating about all of this? The Daily Mail ran a story today, and I think, now I can't say this with any great certainty. Got to be honest. I think the Mail is the only one to touch it. The University of East Anglia. Think Norwich way. Think the east of the country. Think the east. The east. Horatio Alger. No. Horatio Alger went west, didn't he? Think the east of the country. University of East Anglia. They've done an enormous study, a huge study, on the response to the coronavirus. And they have found that locking us all down did fuck all. Yes. Sorry for swearing there. You might have kiddies around the radio or your computer or your phone. Stay-at-home orders have had little effect on stopping the coronavirus from spreading, says the University of East Anglia. Shutting non-essential businesses had little effect, says the University of East Anglia. And other leading scientists are just about starting to be heard and are claiming it has to be said through the Daily Mail. I know. How could a socialist champion the Daily Mail? The Daily Mail is suffering from schizophrenia. If you can diagnose or give a prognosis to a newspaper as if that newspaper was one human being, the Daily Mail is as mad as a box of fucking frogs. Because on the one hand, you'll have race-baiting stories and mad shit designed to demonise migrants. Of course you will. But on the other hand, you get good journalism from time to time. So it's a schizo paper, the Daily Mail. And it's allowing these other scientists saying that the lockdown is nonsense, that the outbreak peaked and began to decline before the lockdown began, and that it's totally unnecessary. So you would think, open everything again. Open it all. Let people go back to work, for fuck's sake. The lockdown will kill hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people maybe through unemployment, bankruptcy, poverty, suicide. Hey, listen, come here. Don't forget Professor Lockdown himself, Neil effin Ferguson, who was breaking the rules himself, as you learned yesterday, to bang his married lover. Yeah. This moron who's been repeatedly wrong over the years, all the way back to foot and mouth disease, when they butchered 150,000 million fucking head of cattle and sheep for no reason. This guy's been wrong all the time. Speaking of Ferguson, Nigel Nelson edits the Sunday Mirror, and he had this to say about Neil Ferguson on Sky this morning. Now, Adam Bolton was criticising Nelson and the Daily Mirror for focusing on the smut angle and not on the fact that people are dying of COVID. Nelson batted it away. Nigel Nelson from the Sunday Mirror. This is good. Nigel Nelson. Let's try that again. It is Thursday. Nigel Nelson!
Anybody who's been a key figure in the whole COVID-19 pandemic it is Professor Ferguson. He is the one who started the process of lockdown. If you remember, just before lockdown happened, the government were talking about herd immunity. It was Professor Ferguson who said that might cause 250,000 deaths and made Boris Johnson completely change his entire approach to the virus.
Yep.
So no, I mean, he's absolutely a pivotal figure in this. And when he does something like that, quite so cavalier about his own advice, I think that should be splashed all over the front pages.
Absolutely right. It should be splashed over the front pages. Jean-Anne tells me she's been acting as a producer this week, Jean-Anne. He's now known as Professor Pantsdown. Yeah. Neil Ferguson. Brilliant point, though, you know, that he made, Nigel Nelson. The country was all for herd immunity. Let people get this fucking thing. Most people won't even know they had it. Let's look after the old and let's carry on. It is a bloody joke. Herd immunity turned upside down, and the way was paved by this guy, Ferguson, to give us the lockdown. And he's not taking his own medicine. Having it off with the fishwife, or whoever she is. News about black people in the papers and on television news today as well. This is interesting. Of course it's interesting if you are black. It says that black men and women are nearly twice as likely to die with coronavirus as white people in England and Wales. This is according to the Office for National Statistics. The analysis shows the inequality persists after taking into account age, your location, and some measures of deprivation and prior health. People from Indian, Bangladeshi and Pakistani communities also had a significantly higher risk of dying as well. The government has launched a review into this apparently. So that's doing the rounds of the news bureaus today. If you want to read that, if you want to, Jesus, for further information, go to The Guardian, The Mail, the BBC, The Telegraph, or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Let's move right on, shall we? We are in a twilight zone, aren't we? Black Mirror. I've been saying this now for a few days, and that's repetitive. I know I'm boring the bejesus out of you when I say that, but we are. It is strange. And when you have a brain, and you obviously have a brain, I know you have, it's really weird and unsettling to be living through this. And people scare the hell out of you, don't they? People go around like Stepford people, basically. They go around like Stepford people from the great film The Stepford Wives. And they take whatever they're told and given, and they just carry on and they wander around, and we're surrounded by them. Maybe we are actually in a zombie apocalypse. Maybe this is the zombie apocalypse. I was walking around a local supermarket this morning for my weekly shop, and many people were walking around with hats on them. Like hats, like woolly hats. It was scorching now. And they had the face masks and they had the rubber gloves. Many people. Am I going to lie? Am I going to exaggerate and say that everybody? No, but the majority of people were wearing woolly hats, masks and gloves, walking around the supermarket. Very careful to observe the 2 metre distancing laid out on the floor by the markings of the helpful supermarket. And those people scare the shit out of me. They do. They scared the absolute shit out of me. That is the zombie apocalypse right there. Those people walking around, frowning at people for invading their 2 metres. That's my fucking 2 metres there. That's my 2 metres. Don't come here. Am I making that up? No, I heard 2 or 3 aisles away from me this morning. I heard grumbling and raised voices. I wouldn't say screaming. Raised voices over people, from people, presumably who were... Well, maybe one person was maybe at a certain shelf and maybe another person was hovering behind them. They scare me, these people. We're in the twilight zone. Had a laugh this afternoon. Sky's Sarah Jane Mee was interviewing Andy Serkis. Have you heard of Andy Serkis? It's spelled Serkis. He's an actor. And I do believe that he voiced Gollum. The Hobbit. Gollum. Lord of the Rings. I never read The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. Don't care for Tolkien very much. Or any of that stuff. Right? Not interested in it. Never did anything for me. So this guy voiced Gollum. And he's jumping on the celebrity charity bandwagon. A lot of celebrities who've not been in the limelight for a while are seizing the opportunity to get themselves back into the limelight by doing something good for the NHS. So Andy Serkis, the actor, is going to be reading The Hobbit live online in the voice of Gollum, maybe, I have no idea. And he says it's going to take him 10 to 12 hours to do it. Although he might have to stop to go for a piss every now and then. Captain Tom is to blame for this latest rush to the camera by celebrities A-list, B-list, C-list and D-list to do something good for the NHS. And just something, my sense of humour is a bit silly. You might not find this remotely amusing, but something made me giggle about this. Sarah Jane Mee, hosting the afternoon show on Sky, was speaking to Andy Serkis, who voiced Gollum, I believe, and then she just brought up Captain Tom, and this made me laugh.
Talk to me about why you're doing this, because you want to raise money for good causes, and what I love is that you're inspired by Captain Tom Moore. Watching him, I mean, there'll be books and films made about him in years to come. I mean, you know, what a story the latter stages of his life have turned out to be.
Yeah.
What kind of fuckery is this?
What did she say again about books and films?
Talk to me about why you're doing this, because you want to raise money for good causes, and what I love is that you're inspired by Captain Tom Moore. Watching him, I mean, there'll be books and films made about him in years to come. I mean,
books and films about a guy shuffling around his garden. Could even the most imaginative and creative scriptwriter in Hollywood come up with a film about an old man walking around his garden? Hang on, though. Hang on. I'm pretty sure we could sell it. In fact, now that I think of it, I'm pretty sure that Hollywood, or somebody in Hollywood, would actually buy it. Gotta have that voiceover. Hayden Hewitt is brilliant at this, by the way. In a world ravaged by a deadly disease, one pensioner put down his Werther's original, tapped the ashes out of his pipe, and set out on an incredible journey to save the NHS. Join Captain Tom as he sets out from his back door to the garden shed. Follow him as he plots a course for the garden gate, before incredibly heading to the back door again 100 times. In cinemas everywhere from August. Andy Serkis was delighted to be talking about his inspiration, Captain Tom, can't think of his surname. Delighted to talk about him.
Absolutely, he's a legendary figure. He will probably be the archetype that people will remember from this time. You know, the heroic character, and such a you know, not to compare him to Bilbo Baggins, but being an
yes, this is what I'm talking about. You're living in the fucking Twilight Zone. He loves Captain Tom, not to compare him to Bilbo Baggins now.
You know, not to compare him to Bilbo Baggins, but being an ordinary person. This story is all about every one of us overcoming our own challenges, our own individual. What we're learning from these experiences. So it's really. I was inspired by Captain Tom, now Colonel Tom, and I just thought if he can walk or 100 laps around his garden at the age of 100, I can get through 300 or whatever it is, 367 pages of The Hobbit. This is a mere kind of ode to Captain Tom, but nevertheless,
Yeah, don't worry about the fact that the Olympics is not going ahead in Tokyo. We've got the virtue signalling Olympics now, replacing it. This is extraordinary, isn't it? The fucking guy walked around his garden with a walking frame. And the media sold it in such a way, with bucket loads, with lorry loads, with dumper trucks full of fucking pathos, Captain Tom, that the NHS got about 30 million quid out of it or more. Jesus. They should have gotten Tom to present Children in Need instead of fucking Lenny Henry, or Comic Relief instead of Lenny Henry. They might have done. He might have done a better job. It's just madness. I love it. Not saying that he's Bilbo Baggins now. Oh God. It got worse on ITV this morning. Lorraine Kelly has been on ITV early morning programming for about 82 and a half years. And she looks the same as the very first time she sat on a morning sofa on ITV. It's not plastic surgery, by the way. It's the picture of Dorian Gray. There is a portrait in Lorraine Kelly's attic where she looks like Zelda from the fucking Terrorhawks, right? That's got to be the answer, right? Anyway, mental health is all the rage, and it's been all the rage for a couple of years. It's a big pharma World Health Organization sponsored agenda to get the media telling you, gaslighting you on a daily basis, that you must have mental health problems. No, you must. You must, actually. Faisal there, listening to the Richie Allen Show. Charlotte in Burnley. Charisse. You must have mental health problems. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. If you don't, it's because you've got even more mental health problems that mean that you're not able to admit it. This is constant banging, bang, 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 drilling into your head mental health. Right? So this morning, Lorraine Kelly, or Zelda, had a celebrity doctor on. A young man called Alex George. You know who he is? Love Island. Love Island. Yes, this is an emergency room doctor called Alex George. He's a bit of a looker. He's a good-looking guy. I'm not gay. I can say a man is good-looking. I'm not a gay boy. Right? So this guy, Alex George, was on Love Island. And Love Island is where you go on television and you basically strip to your shorts and you walk around like a fucking idiot with other good-looking young men and women and try and get a shag on TV. While Anton Deck, or somebody like Anton Deck, does a running commentary on it. It's lowest common denominator television. It's television for creatures so fucking thick they might as well be lying on their backs at the bottom of ponds, Sybil Folty. Thick. That's what Love Island is. And this guy, for some reason, went on Love Island because he's a good-looking doctor. And now he's everywhere because of it. He's on the BBC, he's on Sky, he's on ITV, always talking about health. And he's always whinging on about the mental health of the doctors and the nurses. And now nobody cares. So he wants wellness rooms to be built in hospitals so that the near psychotic staff, psychotic because of the mental pressures on basically treating patients, that which they were taught to do at university, right? The pressures on them, they need to have a wellness room. And he was on speaking with Lorraine Kelly this morning, and well, this is where we are.
We've talked about the camaraderie. We've talked about the fact that physically you're exhausted, and mentally too, and how important it is to look after your mental health. There's these wellness rooms. Tell me about that and how that helps.
Well, actually, our wellness room is just inside our emergency department. It was actually pretty much a store cupboard before with empty boxes and things like that in it. So it was emptied. We put basic few couches and bean bags, a coffee machine in there, and created basically a space that's quiet. It's not clinical. The lights are low. It's just got a dimly lit lamp in there, and it's not meant to be a staff room or anything like that. It's supposed to be a quiet room that you can go into and have reflection, a moment of peace with a colleague or on your own. And I've had so many messages actually since the piece we did last week, saying from people they'd like to try this in their hospital. I'd love to have your input from you both. Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's something that we should do?
Does Lorraine think it's a good idea to have wellness rooms in hospitals? Lorraine Kelly. Do you think it's a good idea, Lorraine?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see that in every single hospital. I know there's some little pockets all over the country that they have that, because I know it makes a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like a little common room that you'd have anywhere, but somewhere you can go and be quiet or to...
They have a staff room! They must have a staff room! I've seen staff rooms in hospitals. They've got someplace that they can go already and sit there and wallow in fucking self-pity. If they want, over a cup of tea. Oh, but it's not called a wellness room, it's called a staff room. Just take the little sign that says staff room and put wellness room in its place.
To chat, offload some of the stuff that's going on in your head, getting away from a clinical setting, and just being able to distance yourself for a moment from everything else that you're seeing right now.
Yeah.
Really important. And the NHS is always neglected the health of its staff. You know, if we could only have a gym in each hospital and we could have a place like this.
A gym. Let's get a gym and a swimming pool in each hospital for the doctors and nurses who are under enormous mental pressure. Let's get a bar in there as well for them. What else could we get for them? Let's build them a go-kart track as well out the back. While we're at it, let's get a bouncy castle so that Alex George and Dr. fucking Hillary can go and play I don't know what the fuck in a bouncy castle. This is insane! And it's your national media, right?
This where people can share their emotions.
Yeah.
We'd have a healthier staff as well.
You're right, and that's
share their emotions with other healthier staff as well. That's all you need.
Important thing. It really is. Dr. Alex, I think we're going to start a campaign to get these all over the country because clearly they work. And you're right. I mean, it doesn't take that much to turn a store cupboard into something of a little sanctuary, I guess. That's what it's like, isn't it?
Yeah, I would absolutely be behind that, and I agree with what Dr. Hillary said there. You know, mental health is so important. I think more than ever now, this has become an issue we're focusing on, you know, for frontline staff as well as the general community. And definitely, you only need a small space. That was a cupboard room. We can do this.
A cupboard room, he said. We only need a small space, a cupboard room. This is pure vaudeville.
We can do this across hospitals, you know, for frontline staff as well as the general community. And definitely, you only need a small space. That was a cupboard room. We can do this across hospitals, in hospitals across the UK. So
yes, you are hearing a young, good-looking doctor who went on Love Island, presumably to get a shag, promoting the changing of cupboards in hospitals into wellness rooms, presumably so that he can go and have his way with the nurses who are on duty that night. This is just, it's a gift from God, really. It keeps me sane. And like I said, most of you won't find any of this funny. I find it hysterical. And maybe that's because I'm slowly losing my mind. Hey, Lorraine, don't forget to ask him about the clap. Not that clap. The clap, because it is Thursday after all. And we all love to clap on Thursdays, don't we?
And also, obviously, tonight, 8 o'clock, we're all going to be applauding obviously, you know, you and all of the staff in the NHS, all of the carers, all the frontline workers. And does it help? Does it really, really help?
Definitely. I mean, it's a huge lift. I mean, actually, I was on shift the other week and we popped out quickly to see, you know, the clapping and experience it. And yeah, it kind of moved a lot of us, I think, to tears almost. It's an incredible thing. I think we couldn't do this without the support of the public, you know, everyone at home who's doing their bit. And it's just an incredible feeling to feel that coming together. That's what it's all about. Us all being one unit and one family.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us again, Dr.
Keep up the good work.
You take care of yourself. You're very precious.
Thank you. Take care, both.
You're very precious. Oh, you're very precious. You're very precious. Fucking Mrs. Doubtfire over here. They need a wellness room. Do you know why they need a wellness room? Because after they've performed the entire score to HMS Pinafore and filmed it and put it on fucking Twitter, because they have no patience to look after, really, they need somewhere to go and put their feet up, don't they? Here's Tina Turner and Ike Turner with River Deep Mountain High. It's time for a drink, methinks. What do you think? No? No? We? No? We? No? I might have a drink. I might have a drink this evening. Okay. Have we got Tina? We have. And Ike.
When I was a little girl.
Yeah, Ike and Tina Turner and River Deep Mountain High on the Richie Allen Radio Show. Thursday's programme, just me today. I was going to be speaking today with Bruce Fenton, and I put Bruce off because, first of all, he's a lovely guy, Bruce, and he's written some very interesting books, and he sent me a copy of his latest book called Exogenesis, Hybrid Humans. So he's really into ufology, of course, but ancient aliens, which I'm very interested in and always have been. I'll give a shout out to my mate Nigel in Waterford, old and dear friend of mine. Nigel's big into this subject as well. And Bruce was going to come on with me today, and I put him off. You might be cheesed off now, because you're thinking, oh, you're having an early bath, Richie, today. Well, I'm not. It's been a long week. I've been back probably about 4.5, 5 weeks. I'm giving it socks. I was very unwell before that, and I do need a little break here and there. But the reason I put Bruce off was because of the weather. It's very warm, and people are out and about enjoying it. And it's the end of the week, bank holiday, and I thought, no, Bruce, come on with me next week, and I'll have had a chance to read your book, and we'll talk about it. He's a researcher, a professional scientific researcher, formerly of investment banking. Stock is Bruce, and I think I came through Bruce, or we connected through friends of mine in the UK that are long-time researchers around ufology, ancient aliens and all of that. So I'm really looking forward to speaking with Bruce Fenton, and we'll do that next week as well. I've also got to rearrange the lady Shoshi Hersku, the author who's based in Israel. She's an Israeli lady, and I wanted her to come on as well this week. I will make time for Shoshi next week. I'll invite her back on. We'll do that next week. So there will be some very interesting conversations next week. And I am going to try a couple of times or 3 times a week, at least in one of the hours, not to be talking about this virus thing. Because it's well, we know what it is. Right? And there are only so many ways we can say that this is very sinister and that the virus is the excuse. The excuse, of course, for what? Well, for transforming what it is to be a human being, to change it utterly, to turn it on its head, basically. Just before we go, a couple of little public service bits. For those of you who have come in from work, you might have been working, you're working from home maybe, but there has been talk that on Sunday, this coming Sunday, Boris Johnson will talk about the next stage of the lockdown, and there were lots of hopes expressed by people that he would announce on Sunday that it will be eased in England. Now I say in England because the countries of the UK are tackling it individually. Alright, so Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland and England doing their own thing. In Scotland, the First Minister there, Nicola Sturgeon, she said today, much to the annoyance, I would imagine, of most Scottish people, that for the foreseeable future in Scotland, there will be no let up. Nicola Sturgeon.
I must make judgments informed by the evidence that are right and safe for Scotland. I will not be pressured into lifting restrictions prematurely before I am as certain as I can be that we will not be risking a resurgence of infection rates. I particularly strongly believe that for us to drop the clear, well-understood stay-at-home message right now could be a potentially catastrophic mistake.
Right, catastrophic mistake, basically. I want to say hi to Look Robots, who's on Twitter. How you doing, Look Robots? He sent me a gif of Zelda from Terrahawks. Yes, that's how I remember her. Pictured her in my mind today. I didn't go looking for an image. Cheers, mate. So finally for today then, late this afternoon, the government moved to try and, well, to calm people down. Calm down, dear. Because you might have expectations in England that Johnson is going to take a lot of these shackles off and unleash us back into the wild of the UK. But apparently not. Here's BBC political correspondent, a woman called Helen Catt, and she's on top of it. Helen Catt on BBC this afternoon.
Yes, certainly the word that's coming out of government today is caution. There is a sense of real wariness about any sort of moving too fast with easing lockdown restrictions, which could then result in another outbreak or a second peak. That's what they're trying to avoid. So the message today from Downing Street, we heard from the Prime Minister telling the Cabinet earlier that any moves will be made by advancing with maximum caution, and also saying that, well, actually this isn't a one-way street, that they will monitor, the government will monitor any impact of any social distancing easing to see what impact it has, and that they wouldn't hesitate to actually tighten rules again if necessary. Now, over the last few weeks, that's something the government has said that would be the very worst outcome, or if we were to have a second peak and another lockdown, both for health but also for the economy. So there is a huge amount of caution in the way they are moving forward. Now, of course, some of that speculation has come about because Boris Johnson said earlier in the week that there were some changes that he would be looking to make from Monday to lockdown restrictions. Now, the understanding is that any changes would be very small that are made next week, and the strong hint is that it will be about those sort of things like the restrictions on outdoor exercising. So that's the sort of thing that they are looking at.
That's it, really. Helen Catt there, BBC, she's gotten an advanced look at what they're going to do. On Sunday, they're going to say that you can go outside with more people than normal. You can meet your friends in their house. And that's about it. The rest of the restrictions will remain in place. Listen, I'm going to love you and leave you today. Thanks for being with me this Thursday afternoon. I'll be back on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. UK time with Sunday View. Enjoy the bank holiday weekend. Let me give a big plug to Hayden Hewitt and Graham Booth. Trigger Warning, which is on youtube.com/Trigger Warning TV. They'll be live tonight from 11 o'clock or 11:30 with their weekly big show, which is always worth checking out. That's youtube.com/Trigger Warning TV. Top men, so they are. I'm going to close out this programme with a tribute to you, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. There's no, I can't find a word for it. I'm not plawmosing you. There's an Irish word. I'm not plawmosing you. No sycophancy here. No bullshit. This is for you. Thanks for sticking with me, right? Have a great weekend. This is Joe Cocker, and I'll see you on Sunday. Look after yourselves and one another. Bye now.